The night sky over Earth was calm, almost too calm. Stars twinkled above, and the city slept quietly. But suddenly, a bright light streaked across the sky, moving faster than any aircraft. People looked up, fear and wonder mixing in their eyes. In a small research lab on the outskirts of the city, David, a young scientist, was working late. Unaware that his life was about to change forever, the light grew larger, landing in a nearby field with a deafening hum. Windows shook and alarms across the city began to blare. David ran outside, his heart pounding. He could see a spaceship, massive and alien. Unlike anything on Earth, its surface was smooth, silver, and reflective. But strange symbols glowed in pulses across its hull. Before he could comprehend, beams of light shot from the ship. A group of creatures appeared tall, thin, with long limbs and glowing eyes. Their skin shimmered in colors David couldn't even name. His first instinct was to run, but before he could move, one of them touched the ground and a force pushed him to his knees. Human. "Come," a voice echoed inside his mind. David froze. He hadn't heard words, but the meaning was clear. Fear gripped him as he realized that these beings were communicating telepathically. He was lifted off the ground, floating inside a chamber of the ship. The walls were smooth, glowing faintly, and the air smelled faintly sweet. Other humans were there, some crying, some stunned into silence. A tall alien with sharp, angular features stepped forward. "You will serve the Alliance," the alien said. Its voice was deep and commanding. "One human will be chosen to marry Zyra, to unite our worlds." David's heart stopped. Marry an alien? The words felt impossible. He looked around and saw a creature being escorted toward the chamber, a girl. But unlike any girl on Earth, she had sharp angles to her face, glowing eyes, and her skin shimmered in strange patterns. To any human, she would appear terrifying. The aliens called her Zyra. She did not speak. Her eyes, however, were wide and curious, not cruel. David couldn't read her emotions fully, but he sensed a hint of fear beneath her strange exterior. You can't force me," David shouted, though his voice sounded small and weak. The alien ignored him. Guards appeared, tall and strong, and pushed him forward. He stumbled but could not escape that as he was led through the corridors of the ship. He saw the scale of their world. The walls shimmered like liquid metal. Strange creatures moved in silence, performing tasks David didn't understand. Some looked like humans, some like animals, and others defied all description. The air was filled with a soft hum, almost like music, but it resonated deep in his chest, making him uneasy. Finally, he was brought before a council of aliens, seated on high platforms. Their eyes glowed as they examined him. David felt tiny, like a child in a room full of giants. One of them, taller and more intimidating than the rest, spoke again. "You have been chosen. Resistance is unnecessary. Your life depends on obedience." David's mind raced. He thought of his home, his family, his quiet life on Earth. Now it felt like a dream, slipping away. And yet, in the corner of his vision, Zyra watched him. Her expression was unreadable, but something in her eyes made David hesitate. Could there be more to her than the hideous mask she wore? As the chamber doors closed behind him, he knew one thing for certain. His ordinary life was over. He was trapped in an alien world, forced into a marriage he never asked for. And the real question haunted him. Was Zyra a monster or a friend hiding behind a frightening face? The ship shuddered and the lights dimmed. Outside, Earth seemed so far away, almost unreal. David had no choice but to step forward into the unknown, his heart heavy and his mind racing with fear and curiosity. The adventure and danger had only just begun. David's first steps into Zyra's world were slow and cautious. The chamber where he had been led was vast, stretching higher than any building he had seen on Earth. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that danced across the smooth walls. Alien guards moved silently, their glowing eyes scanning every corner. Zyra was brought before him. She stood apart, her posture tense, as if every step she took required careful thought. Her skin shimmered in strange patterns, her sharp features almost frightening, and her glowing eyes seemed to pierce through him. Yet, despite her appearance, there was a hesitancy in her movements that made David pause. She seemed nervous and sure of what was expected of her. David tried to speak, his voice trembling. I don't understand." "Why me?" Zyra tilted her head slightly, observing him. She did not speak, at least not in words he could understand. But through some subtle gestures, small nods, slight movements, she communicated something David could not yet name: curiosity, maybe even fear. The alien guards remained close, watching for any sign of rebellion. David realized quickly that any wrong move could be fatal. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. But as he looked at Zyra more closely, he noticed something unexpected. Beneath the sharp angles of her face and the glowing eyes, there was a softness in her movements, a gentleness in the way she handled the objects she carried. She did not lash out or appear cruel. She flinched when a guard barked orders, and her glowing eyes dimmed slightly whenever David looked at her. For the first time, he questioned his fear. Was she really the monster he had imagined, or was she as trapped in this situation as he was? As the hours passed, David and Zyra were left together in a chamber to wait. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the alien ship. David tried to speak again slowly. "I'm David. What's your name?" Zyra's glowing eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, she spoke in a language he could not understand. But then, miraculously, she repeated it slowly, mimicking his pronunciation. "Zyra," she said, her voice soft and cautious. David was surprised. Despite her terrifying appearance, her voice was melodic, almost human. The word lingered in the air, and for the first time, David felt something other than curiosity. He noticed small things: how Zyra kept her hands folded, how she avoided touching anything she shouldn't, and how she watched the guards' every movement. It was clear she was smart, aware, and careful. David began to see a mind behind the mask, a heart hidden behind the face that everyone else had called hideous. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the ship. The chamber doors opened, and an alien messenger arrived, delivering urgent news. There was trouble in the lower decks. A human had tried to escape. Guards rushed past them, leaving David and Zyra alone once more. David felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. "We need to be careful," he whispered. Zyra tilted her head again, acknowledging him without words. For the first time, they shared a silent understanding. They were both trapped, both strangers in a world that demanded obedience, and somehow, they might need each other to survive Dada's night, or what passed for night on the ship settled in. David realized that his first impression of Zyra was incomplete. She was not simply a terrifying alien. She was something more complex, more human than he had dared to imagine. And for the first time, a small spark of hope flickered in his heart. The suspense of the unknown hung heavy. Was Zyra a friend, or would the alien laws force her into a role he could not trust? And more importantly, could David navigate this dangerous world without losing himself? The chamber doors closed softly, the lights dimmed, and David sat across from Zyra, staring into her glowing eyes. The first meeting had passed, but the real story, the real test, was only beginning. David spent the next few days trapped in the alien palace, trying to make sense of his situation. Every corridor looked the same: gleaming walls, floating lights, and the constant hum of the ship. Guards followed him everywhere, their glowing eyes tracking his every movement. The thought of escape haunted him, but each attempt ended in failure. The aliens were too powerful, their technology far beyond anything on Earth. Zyra stayed nearby, silent and observant. At first, David thought she was only another reminder of his captivity, a symbol of the marriage he had no desire for. But slowly, he began to notice her kindness in small ways. She brought him water without being asked. She nudged objects back into place after he knocked them over. Even when the guards were around, she acted carefully, as if protecting him in subtle ways. David's frustration grew. "Why am I stuck here?" he shouted one evening when the guards left for their rotations. Zyra flinched at his voice, but she did not move away. Instead, she tilted her head and studied him, her glowing eyes calm but curious. He realized something: she wasn't cruel. She was just different. Days passed, and David tried again to communicate with her. Using gestures and simple words, they began to understand each other slowly. Zyra pointed to objects, and he repeated the words aloud. She nodded when he got them right. Each small interaction was a victory. It felt strange, almost comforting, in the midst of fear. One night, David heard whispers from the guards outside. A rebellion was brewing. Some aliens were angry with the council's decisions, and humans might be caught in the middle. Fear gripped him. Could Zyra be part of this rebellion? Or worse, was she aligned with the council against him? Despite his doubts, he noticed her bravery. When a small accident occurred, a servant tripped near the energy conduits, Zyra rushed forward without hesitation, catching the servant before harm came. Her glowing eyes flickered with concern, not malice. David's heart skipped. Maybe she wasn't just a prisoner like him, maybe she was more. In the days that followed, they began to share small moments. David told Zyra about Earth, about the oceans, the sky, and the quiet streets of his city. Zyra listened intently, her eyes reflecting curiosity and wonder. She showed him parts of her world too, the gardens inside the palace, filled with glowing plants and strange flowers, and the floating walkways where the council met. David realized her life was not easy. She was alone in a world that judged her by her appearance, much like humans might judge her as hideous. Their bond grew silently, but the pressure of the marriage still loomed over them. The council expected obedience, and the guards reminded them daily that disobedience could mean death. David felt torn. He wanted to escape, but he also wanted to understand Zyra, to know the heart behind her frightening face. Then, one evening, a loud explosion shook the palace. The humans and aliens panicked as alarms blared. Something dangerous was moving through the lower decks, something that threatened everyone. David and Zyra were caught in the chaos. For the first time, they acted together instinctively. She guided him through hidden passages, her hands firm yet gentle. David followed, trusting her in a way he had never trusted anyone before. By the time they reached safety, David's mind was racing. He had begun to see the truth. Zyra's appearance was only skin deep. Her courage, her intelligence, and her kindness were real. And somehow, in the middle of fear and uncertainty, he felt a spark of trust. But the danger was far from over. The rebellion, the council, and the mysterious forces moving through the ship were still out there. David knew one thing clearly: survival would require him and Zyra to work together. And whether he liked it or not, their fates were now entwined. As they hid in the shadows of the palace corridors, David looked at Zyra and whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe you're not what I expected. Maybe you're more." Her glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, the silence between them felt like understanding rather than fear. The struggle had only just begun, and the real test of trust and courage was waiting just around the corner. The palace corridors were quiet after the chaos, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. David and Zyra hid in a dimly lit chamber, their hearts still pounding from the explosion. The hum of the ship echoed around them, reminding them that danger could strike at any moment. Yet for the first time, David felt a strange sense of connection with Zyra. He watched her closely. The sharp angles of her face, the glowing eyes, the strange shimmer of her skin, it all seemed less frightening now. What caught his attention was the gentleness in her movements, the way she handled objects and creatures with care. There was patience in her eyes, and something else, something human. "You." "Zyra?" David whispered, unsure if she could hear him. She looked at him, tilting her head slightly, and for a moment, their eyes locked. It was as if she understood his thoughts without words. Slowly, David began to speak about Earth, about small joys, quiet streets, the warmth of sunlight on his skin. Zyra listened, her glowing eyes softening. She mimicked some words, and David laughed softly at her efforts. For the first time, the fear between them began to fade. They shared a small meal, alien food that smelled strange but was edible, and talked in gestures, simple words and growing understanding. David noticed her curiosity. Zyra asked questions about humans, about their ways, about life on Earth. He realized she was intelligent, observant, and far more complex than anyone could have guessed from her appearance. Then a sudden noise broke the moment. A servant had stumbled near one of the energy conduits, and a small spark ignited. Without hesitation, Zyra leapt forward, shielding the servant and guiding him away from harm. David's heart raced as he saw bravery and compassion in action. She risked herself to save another being, showing courage he had never expected. David began to understand something important. Zyra's outer appearance, the features that humans might call hideous, did not define her. Her heart, her intelligence, and her bravery were what mattered. And in that realization, a small warmth grew inside him, a respect, a budding trust. Perhaps even the beginnings of something deeper. As night, or the alien equivalent, settled in, they found themselves sitting close, sharing stories without words. Zyra showed him a small device, projecting images of her homeworld. Strange landscapes, glowing forests, and towering cities unfolded before David's eyes. He marveled at her world, realizing she had lived in isolation, judged by others for her looks, yet carrying a strength and wisdom beyond his imagining. David wanted to speak his thoughts aloud, to say that he saw her true self. But he hesitated, unsure if she would understand or misinterpret him. Instead, he simply nodded when she gestured, smiled when she tried words, and listened when she shared glimpses of her life. The trust between them grew quietly but strongly. Then came the real test. From the shadows, David overheard a whisper of a plan, a rebellion against humans, a secret plot that threatened both species. Fear surged through him. Could he trust Zyra to be on his side? Could she be trusted at all? Yet when he looked at her glowing eyes, calm but attentive, he realized she was not part of the plot. She was simply herself, brave, intelligent, and kind. For the first time, David felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps survival was possible, not just physically, but emotionally. Perhaps he and Zyra could face the challenges ahead together. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could see past the surface to the heart within. As they rested in the chamber, hidden from prying eyes, David whispered to himself, "Maybe appearances don't matter here. Maybe only the heart does." Zyra glanced at him, her glowing eyes reflecting something unreadable yet sincere. In that silent exchange, a bond formed, delicate, fragile, yet real. Outside, the ship thrummed with danger, secrets, and politics. But inside, two unlikely companions began to understand each other. The real challenge was coming, but for the first time, David felt he was not entirely alone. And for Zyra, perhaps she had finally found someone who could see beyond the face she had always hidden behind. The palace's corridors were quiet, but the silence was deceptive. David and Zyra had been hiding for hours, waiting for a chance to move safely. Outside, alarms had stopped, but David could feel the tension in the air. The rebels, the council, the guards, they were all still watching, waiting for a mistake. "David," Zyra whispered, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows. "We need to act. Danger is near." He nodded, trusting her judgment. For the first time, David realized he could rely on Zyra, not just for guidance, but for survival. Together, they stepped carefully, moving through hidden passages Zyra had memorized. The walls hummed softly, strange symbols lighting their path, and David marveled at how confidently she navigated the alien palace. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed behind them. A patrol of alien guards rounded the corner, their glowing eyes searching. David froze. Zyra reacted instantly, grabbing his arm and pulling him into a small alcove. They pressed themselves against the wall as the guards passed, silent as shadows. David's heart raced. Every step, every breath felt dangerous. Once the patrol moved on, Zyra whispered, "We must reach the control chamber. There is a plot that can destroy humans and loyal aliens. We can stop it." David's mind spun. A plot? Danger? Yet there was no time to hesitate. Together, they moved through the corridors, using Zyra's knowledge and his quick thinking to avoid detection. They climbed stairways, hid behind energy conduits, and even had to squeeze through tight ventilation shafts. During the tense journey, David saw more of Zyra's courage. When a small piece of machinery began to spark, threatening to electrocute them, Zyra leapt forward without hesitation, moving him out of harm's way. Her glowing eyes reflected concern, but also determination. David realized she was not only brave, she cared about him. Even in the midst of chaos. At last, they reached a high-security chamber. Inside, glowing panels and holograms displayed the palace's security and political systems. David watched in awe as Zyra touched the panels with delicate, precise movements. "We can stop the rebels," she said, her voice calm but urgent. But just as they were about to act, the doors burst open. Guards stormed in, weapons raised. David panicked, but Zyra's calm presence steadied him. She took his hand, guiding him through a hidden passage behind the control panels. Together, they escaped, ducking and running through the winding corridors. David felt his heart pounding, but also an exhilarating sense of teamwork. They finally reached a hidden exit leading to the palace gardens. Strange alien plants glowed softly in the dark, and the air smelled sweet and foreign. David realized they had made it alive together, and stronger than before. He looked at Zyra, and for the first time he truly saw her. Not just the alien features, not just the frightening mask, her courage, her intelligence, and her kindness shone brighter than any appearance. She had risked herself to protect him, and in return, he had trusted her completely. "You're incredible," David whispered, almost to himself. Zyra's glowing eyes met his, and a faint smile appeared, an expression of relief, trust, and perhaps even a hint of friendship. For the first time since his capture, David felt hope. Not just for survival, but for the connection they were building. He realized that appearances did not matter. Courage, loyalty, and understanding were far more important. As they hid in the garden, catching their breath, a new determination filled David. The rebellion, the council, and the dangers of this alien world were still out there. But now he and Zyra were not alone. They were a team. And together, perhaps they could face anything. The palace shimmered around them, alive with hidden dangers and secret plots. But David knew one thing clearly. Trust and courage had created a bond stronger than fear. And in the heart of this strange alien world, two unlikely allies had begun to stand together. The hidden garden was quiet now, bathed in soft alien light. David and Zyra crouched behind glowing plants, catching their breath after narrowly escaping the guards. The air smelled faintly sweet, and strange flowers shimmered around them. For a moment, the danger felt distant, and David finally allowed himself to look at Zyra not just as a strange alien, but as a person. You've been helping me all along," David said softly, "even when the guards are watching." Zyra's glowing eyes met his, calm and steady. She didn't speak, but the faint nod of her head was enough. In that moment, David realized something he hadn't fully accepted before. Zyra's appearance, the sharp angles, glowing eyes and shimmering skin was only a mask. The kindness, courage, and intelligence he had seen were the real her. Curiosity and a mix of fear and excitement surged within him. Can you show me?" he asked. Zyra hesitated, then placed her hands on a small alien device. Light shimmered, and slowly the mask of her hideous exterior began to shift. David's eyes widened as he saw her true face revealed beneath the outer layer smooth skin. Gentle eyes and features that were both human-like and alien in perfect harmony. She was stunning. Not just beautiful, but strong, kind, and intelligent. David felt a wave of emotion relief, awe, and a growing admiration. He realized his fear and disgust had been based on appearances alone. He had judged her before understanding her heart. Now he could see clearly. Zyra was not a monster. She was extraordinary, but the revelation did not stop there. Zyra began to explain. Her words were broken at first, but David understood. Her species had evolved with protective features. The outer appearance was a form of defense, meant to intimidate enemies and hide vulnerability. Only those who earned trust could see the true form underneath. Her kindness and bravery had always been genuine, but the mask had forced humans to fear her. David felt ashamed of his earlier judgment. He looked at her, and something shifted inside him. He realized that trust, courage, and understanding were far more important than appearances. Zyra had risked herself for him, guided him through danger, and shown intelligence beyond anything he had imagined. She deserved respect, not fear. Before he could speak, a low rumble shook the garden. The rebellion was moving through the palace, and danger was approaching once more. David knew they could not stay hidden. Together, he and Zyra moved through secret paths, using the knowledge she had shared. Each step tested their trust. Each corridor forced them to act together. Through the chaos, David saw her bravery again. She acted without hesitation, making split-second decisions to avoid guards and navigate traps. He followed, trusting her completely. For the first time, he felt that they were equals partners, not prisoner and alien, not captor and captive. Finally, they reached a vantage point overlooking the palace's central chamber. From there, David saw the council, the guards, and the rebels moving in a tense, dangerous dance. He realized that survival would require not just skill, but cleverness and courage. And with Zyra at his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. As they crouched in the shadows, David whispered, almost to himself, "I see you now, not the mask, but you. The real you." Zyra's eyes glowed softly, and for the first time, she smiled fully, her true self shining through. In that moment, David knew that their journey was no longer just about survival. It was about trust, understanding, and seeing the heart behind the face. And with the palace trembling under the threat of rebellion, they would need every ounce of courage and every bit of cleverness to face the challenges ahead. The stakes had risen. The dangers were real, but the bond between them was stronger than ever. And David knew, without doubt, that he would never look at Zyra or anyone through fear and prejudice again. The palace trembled under the threat of rebellion, alarms echoing through the corridors. David and Zyra crouched behind a pillar, watching the council and guards below. The entire alien world seemed on edge, and one wrong move could mean death. But for David, the true challenge was no longer just survival. It was the choice he had to make. The council had summoned him. A human had never been given a choice like this before, and now he had to decide: return to Earth, leaving Zyra behind, or stay and honor the forced marriage that had brought him into this strange world. He glanced at Zyra. Her glowing eyes met his, calm and steady, but full of trust. He knew she would follow his decision, whatever it was. Memories of the past days flooded him. He remembered her courage when she had saved the servant, her guidance through the palace corridors, and the moments of understanding they had shared. He remembered the revelation of her true appearance and the kindness behind her glowing eyes. She was no longer a frightening alien. She was someone he admired, someone he had come to trust, and someone he had begun to care for. The council's leader, a towering figure with piercing eyes, stepped forward. "Human," he said, his voice echoing across the chamber. "The choice is yours. Do you honor the Alliance and stay, or return to your world?" David took a deep breath, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of the decision, the future of humans and aliens hanging in the balance. He thought of Earth, his family, his friends, the life he had known. And then he thought of Zyra, the bravery, intelligence, and kindness that no one else could see. He stepped forward, his voice clear. I choose to stay. Not because I am forced, but because I want to. I have seen the heart behind Zyra's face, and I trust her. I will honor this alliance, and I will honor her." The chamber fell silent. The council stared, unaccustomed to hearing such a choice from a human. Guards shifted uneasily, unsure of what this meant. Then, slowly, the council nodded. Respect flickered in their glowing eyes. David had not only made the choice, they saw that he had made it with courage and wisdom. Zyra stepped forward, her glowing eyes bright with relief and a faint smile. She reached for David's hand, and he took it without hesitation. In that simple gesture, the bond they had formed through fear, danger, and understanding was sealed. The council murmured among themselves, then spoke again. "The alliance is honored. The human and Zyra shall remain together. The rebellion is contained, and the world shall see peace." David exhaled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He glanced at Zyra. She was smiling now fully, showing the warmth and kindness that had always been there. For the first time, he realized that appearances were meaningless compared to heart and courage. Outside, the palace shimmered in the soft alien light. The rebellion had been averted, the council had been convinced, and the humans and aliens were on the path to unity. But for David, the most important victory was personal. He had chosen trust over fear, love over prejudice, and understanding over appearances. As he and Zyra walked through the gardens, the glowing plants lighting their path, David felt a sense of hope he had never known. He had been forced into an alien world, faced danger, and confronted fear, but he had also found connection, friendship, and something far more precious, a heart that saw him as he truly was. Zyra squeezed his hand gently. "Together," she said. "Together," David agreed. And in that moment, the alien world no longer seemed frightening. It seemed full of possibility, trust, and hope, a place where hearts, not appearances, truly mattered. The story of a human and an alien, once strangers divided by fear, had reached its conclusion. But the bond they had forged would endure, stronger than any danger, prejudice, or obstacle. Together, they stepped forward, ready to face the future, not as human and alien, not as captive and captor, but as two beings who had chosen to see the heart behind the face.